Marcus Chen adjusted his tactical vest for the 100th time as he walked through the gleaming corridors of the Zephyrian diplomatic station. The polished metal walls reflected his human features back at him, a stark reminder that he didn't belong here. At 28, he was one of the youngest humans ever assigned to alien protection duty, but his military record spoke for itself. 3 tours in the Outer Rim conflicts, countless successful missions, and a reputation for getting the job done no matter what. The assignment briefing had been simple enough: protect Princess Lyra Vexthari of the Zephyrian Empire. The galaxy's most powerful alien civilization had specifically requested human guards for their royal family, claiming that human unpredictability and combat instincts made them superior protectors. It was supposed to be an honor, a sign that humanity was finally being taken seriously by the galactic community. What the briefing hadn't mentioned was that Princess Lyra absolutely despised humans. Marcus reached the ornate doors of the princess's quarters and pressed his palm against the bioscanner. The doors slid open with a soft whisper, revealing a room that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale rather than a space station. Crystalline formations grew from the walls, pulsing with soft blue light, while floating gardens drifted lazily through the air. The ceiling displayed a real-time view of the nearby nebula, its purple and gold swirls casting dancing shadows across everything. The princess stood on her private balcony, gazing out at the stars. Even from behind, Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. Lyra was unlike any alien he'd encountered before. Where most of the species humanity had met were either brutally practical or coldly logical, the Zephyrians were creatures of pure elegance. They stood 7 feet tall on average, with skin that shimmered like pearl and hair that moved as if it were underwater. Their large violet eyes could express emotions that humans were still learning to read. "Your Highness," Marcus called out, keeping his voice respectful but firm. "I'm Marcus Chen, your new protection detail." Lyra turned slowly and Marcus felt his breath catch. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, but her expression was one of pure disgust. Her violet eyes narrowed as they took in his human form, from his short brown hair to his combat boots. "Another human," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality that all Zephyrians possessed. But there was venom in those musical tones. "How delightful. I suppose you're here to protect me with your primitive violence and limited intellect?" Marcus had dealt with hostile targets before, but never one he was supposed to protect. "I'm here to keep you safe, Your Highness. My methods might be different from what you're used to, but they're effective." Lyra laughed, a sound like silver bells being dropped on glass. "Effective? You humans stumbled into space travel barely 2 centuries ago. My people were exploring the galaxy when your species was still living in caves, and now you presume to protect me?" She moved closer, her movements graceful and predatory. "Do you know why my father insists on human guards? It's not because you're skilled. It's because you're expendable. When the real threats come, you'll throw yourselves at them like the savage animals you are, buying time for more important people to escape." The words stung, but Marcus kept his expression neutral. He'd heard worse during his military service, though usually not from someone he was risking his life to protect. "I understand you have concerns about human capabilities, Your Highness. Maybe if you gave me a chance to prove..." "Prove what?" Lyra interrupted, circling him like a predator studying prey. "That you can grunt and point weapons at things? That you can follow simple orders without drooling on yourself? I've studied your species, human. You're ruled by primitive emotions, prone to violence, and utterly lacking in the sophistication required for civilized society." She stopped directly in front of him, looking down from her impressive height. "Your people are a cosmic accident, a fluke of evolution that somehow managed to achieve spaceflight before destroying yourselves. The fact that the Galactic Council granted you membership is the greatest joke in the known universe." Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he forced himself to remain professional. "Regardless of your opinion of my species, Your Highness, I have a job to do. There are credible threats against your life, and I intend to make sure nothing happens to you." "How noble," Lyra sneered. "The primitive human thinks he can protect a princess of the Zephyrian Empire. Tell me, Marcus Chen, what do you know about the threats against me?" "The intelligence suggests multiple factions want to prevent the trade negotiations between your empire and the Human Federation. Some want to start a war. Others want to maintain the current power structure. There have been 3 assassination attempts in the past month. Lyra's expression shifted slightly, surprise flickering across her features. You actually read the briefing materials. I read everything twice, Marcus replied. I also cross-referenced the threat assessments with historical data on similar situations. The pattern suggests the next attempt will come within the next 72 hours, probably during the cultural exchange ceremony. For a moment, something like respect flickered in Lyra's violet eyes. Then the mask of disdain slammed back into place. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. Reading reports doesn't make you competent. She moved to her desk, a floating crystal formation that responded to her touch. I want you to understand something, human. I didn't ask for you to be here. I don't want you here. And I certainly don't need you here. The only reason I'm tolerating your presence is because my father commanded it. Marcus nodded. Understood, Your Highness. But I'm still going to do my job. See that you stay out of my way while you do it, Lyra said dismissively. I have important work to do and I can't have some trigger-happy primitive disrupting delicate negotiations. As if summoned by her words, an aide appeared at the door. The young Zephyrian looked nervous as he approached the princess. Your Highness, there's been a development. The Krillian ambassador has requested a private meeting. Tonight, Marcus stepped forward. That wasn't on the schedule. Any unplanned meetings need to be vetted for security. See? Lyra interrupted, gesturing at Marcus as if he proved her point. This is exactly what I mean. You automatically assume violence is the solution. The Krillians are our allies, you ignorant savage. Not everything is a threat to be shot at. But Marcus was already analyzing the situation. The Krillians had been neutral in the trade negotiations, which made a sudden private meeting suspicious. More importantly, his instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Your Highness, he said carefully, I strongly advise against any unscheduled meetings until we can verify. Your advice is neither requested nor required. Lyra cut him off coldly. I will meet with Ambassador Krex tonight as requested. You may lurk in the shadows and play soldier if it makes you feel important, but do not interfere with actual diplomacy. Marcus watched as she swept from the room, her aide trailing behind her. Every tactical instinct he possessed was telling him this was a setup, but the princess had made it clear that his warnings weren't welcome. He had a feeling that the next 72 hours were going to test both of them in ways neither expected. The Krillian embassy occupied an entire level of the diplomatic station, its architecture a stark contrast to the flowing elegance of Zephyrian design. Where Zephyrian spaces curved and flowed like water, Krillian spaces were all sharp angles and brutal efficiency. Marcus had spent the afternoon studying the building's layout, identifying potential threats and escape routes. His security sweep had revealed several concerning details that Princess Lyra had dismissed as human paranoia. Now, as evening approached, Marcus positioned himself in the corridor outside the meeting room. He wore a formal diplomatic security uniform rather than tactical gear, a concession to Lyra's demand that he not embarrass her with his military theatrics. The lighter armor felt wrong, but he'd hidden several backup weapons in the formal jacket. Through his earpiece, he monitored communications from the station's security center. Everything seemed normal, but Marcus had learned to trust his instincts over official reports. Something felt wrong about this entire situation. Princess Lyra emerged from her quarters precisely on time, accompanied by two of her own Zephyrian guards. She had changed into formal diplomatic attire that seemed to be woven from starlight itself. The gown shifted color as she moved, cycling through deep purples and silver that matched her eyes. Despite her obvious beauty, her expression remained cold as her gaze fell on Marcus. Still here, I see, she said dismissively. I suppose you plan to follow me around like a lost pet. It's my job, Your Highness, Marcus replied evenly. Your job is to stay out of the way of important people doing important work, Lyra corrected. She gestured to her Zephyrian guards. Captain Veltar and Lieutenant Nix are perfectly capable of handling my security. They understand subtlety, diplomacy, and the proper way to conduct themselves in civilized company. Captain Veltar, a tall Zephyrian with silver-streaked hair, nodded politely to Marcus. His expression was neutral, but Marcus caught something in his violet eyes that might have been sympathy. Lieutenant Nix, younger and more rigid in her posture, looked at Marcus with the same disdain as her princess. The human stays behind, Lyra declared as they approached the meeting room. This is a delicate diplomatic situation and I won't have it ruined by human tactlessness. Marcus stepped forward. Your Highness, I need to be present to properly assess. You need to learn your place, Lyra interrupted sharply. You are not a diplomat. You are not an advisor. You are barely qualified to be called a guard. You will wait outside like the primitive security you are. The doors to the meeting room opened, revealing Ambassador Krex and his entourage. The Krillian leader was impressive even by alien standards, standing 8 feet tall with metallic skin that reflected the room's lights. His forearms moved independently as he gestured, and his compound eyes seemed to take in everything at once. Princess Lyra, Ambassador Krex said in the clicking, chittering language of his people. A translation device converted his words to galactic standard. Thank you for accepting my invitation. I have urgent matters to discuss regarding the trade negotiations. Of course, Ambassador, Lyra replied graciously. I'm always willing to hear the concerns of our allies. Marcus watched the exchange carefully, his tactical training analyzing every detail. Krex seemed nervous, his secondary arms twitching in ways that suggested stress. More concerning, Marcus counted 7 Krillians in the room when standard diplomatic protocol called for no more than 4. The extras were trying to look casual, but their positioning suggested military training. Your Highness, Marcus said quietly, stepping closer. I'm seeing some irregularities. Enough, Lyra snapped, not bothering to lower her voice. Ambassador, please excuse this human's primitive suspicions. His species sees threats everywhere because violence is all they understand. Ambassador Krex's compound eyes fixed on Marcus, and something in that alien gaze made every alarm bell in the human's mind start ringing. Perhaps the human should join us, Krex said smoothly. I would be interested in the perspective of Earth's representatives. Absolutely not, Lyra replied firmly. This meeting is for civilized beings only. The human will wait outside. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, but Lyra was already entering the room with her guards. The doors began to slide shut, and Marcus made a split-second decision. He wedged his boot in the doorframe, stopping the closure. Your Highness, I really must insist. The explosion knocked Marcus backward, the force of the blast sending him tumbling across the corridor. His ears rang as he struggled to his feet, drawing his sidearm automatically. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main systems failed, casting everything in hellish red illumination. Through the smoke and debris, Marcus could see into the meeting room. Princess Lyra was on the ground, her starlight gown torn and bloodied. Captain Veltar lay motionless nearby, while Lieutenant Nix was trying to crawl toward her princess despite an obviously broken arm. The Krillians were moving through the wreckage, weapons drawn. So much for diplomatic immunity, Marcus muttered, checking his weapon's power cell. Ambassador Krex emerged from the smoke, his metallic skin scorched but otherwise undamaged. The human survived. He clicked to his soldiers in their native language. Kill him quickly, Marcus smiled grimly. One advantage of humanity's rapid expansion into space was that most aliens underestimated human combat capabilities. They saw the diplomatic protocols and assumed weakness. They didn't understand that humans had been perfecting the art of war for millennia before they ever left Earth. The first Krillian soldier rounded the corner and walked directly into Marcus's trap. The human had positioned himself behind a structural support, using the debris for concealment. His first shot took the alien center mass, the energy bolt punching through chitinous armor like paper. The soldier dropped without a sound. One down, Marcus whispered into his comm unit, hoping someone was still listening. Multiple hostiles in the diplomatic section. Princess Lyra is down. I need immediate backup, Static answered him. The explosion had knocked out communications. 2 more Krillians appeared, moving more cautiously now. They'd learned from their comrade's mistake and were using proper tactical formations. Marcus adjusted his strategy accordingly, using the corridor's layout to his advantage. Humans might be newer to space warfare, but they understood violence in ways that peaceful species never would. Marcus rolled from cover, snapping off 2 quick shots that forced the Krillians to duck. While they were suppressed, he sprinted across the corridor to a better position. A Krillian weapon discharge scorched the air where he'd been, standing moments before. The human is more capable than expected, one of the soldiers clicked to his partner. All humans are dangerous, the other replied. That's why they must be eliminated along with the princess. Marcus filed that information away while planning his next move. This wasn't just an assassination attempt against Lyra. It was meant to destroy the alliance between humans and Zephyrians. Someone wanted both species eliminated or at war with each other. The sound of movement from the meeting room caught his attention. Through the smoke, he could see Ambassador Krex approaching Princess Lyra's unconscious form, a ceremonial blade gleaming in his upper right hand. Time to end this charade, Krex clicked. The princess dies, the humans take the blame, and the Krillian Empire claims its rightful place as the galaxy's dominant power. Marcus made a decision that would have horrified his tactical instructors. Instead of maintaining his defensive position, he charged directly into the meeting room, firing as he moved. His first shot took down one of the soldiers guarding the entrance. His second shot missed Krex but forced the ambassador to dive away from Lyra. "You're too late, human," Krex snarled, raising his weapon. "Your primitive aggression proves exactly what we've been telling the galaxy about your species." "Maybe," Marcus admitted, diving behind an overturned table. "But there's something you should know about human aggression." "What's that?" Marcus smiled coldly as he pulled the pin from the concussion grenade he'd been saving. "We're really good at it." The explosion in the confined space was devastating. When the smoke cleared, Marcus found himself on the floor, his ears ringing and his vision blurred. But he was alive, which was more than he could say for most of the Krillians. Ambassador Krex was still moving, his metallic skin cracked and leaking strange fluids, but he was crawling toward a weapon that had been thrown clear by the blast. Marcus tried to stand, but his legs weren't cooperating properly. "Still alive," Krex wheezed in Galactic Standard. Impressive for such a primitive species, but ultimately futile. The ambassador's hand closed around his weapon just as an energy bolt took his head clean off. Marcus turned painfully to see Princess Lyra propped against the wall, Lieutenant Nyx's sidearm smoking in her hands. Blood ran down the princess's face from a head wound, and her beautiful gown was torn and stained, but her violet eyes burned with determination. "Perhaps," she said quietly, looking directly at Marcus for the first time without disgust, "I misjudged human capabilities." The medical bay of the diplomatic station buzzed with activity as doctors from 3 different species worked to treat the wounded. Marcus sat on an examination table, wincing as a Zephyrian medic used some kind of healing light to seal the cuts on his arms. The doctor's touch was gentle, almost reverent, as if he were handling something precious rather than a primitive human. Across the room, Princess Lyra lay on a more advanced medical platform while the chief physician examined her head wound. Her injuries looked worse than they were. Zephyrian blood was naturally luminescent, making even small cuts appear dramatic. But Marcus had seen enough battlefield wounds to know she'd been lucky. A few inches lower, and Ambassador Krex's ceremonial blade would have found something vital. "The human needs rest," the medic attending Marcus said in accented Galactic Standard. "Concussion protocol requires at least 6 hours of observation." "I'm fine," Marcus protested, starting to stand. The room spun violently and he sat back down harder than intended. "You are not fine," Princess Lyra said from her bed. Her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it, missing the usual edge of disdain. "You nearly died protecting me." Marcus looked at her in surprise. This was the first time she'd acknowledged his actions as anything other than primitive violence. The princess met his gaze for a moment, then looked away, something like shame flickering across her features. Lieutenant Nyx appeared in the doorway, her arm in a regeneration cast but otherwise mobile. Behind her stood Captain Veltar, moving slowly but alive despite the explosion that had thrown him across the room. Both Zephyrian guards looked at Marcus with expressions he'd never seen from their species before, something approaching respect. "The station is secure," Nyx reported. "We found 3 more Krillian infiltrators in the maintenance sections. They were preparing to sabotage the environmental systems." "A full-scale assault," Veltar added, his musical voice rougher than usual. "If they had succeeded in making it look like an accident caused by human incompetence, the Alliance would have been destroyed," Lyra finished quietly. "My father would have declared war on humanity, and the Krillians would have picked up the pieces of both our civilizations." Marcus processed this information while the medic finished his work. The scope of the conspiracy was larger than anyone had realized. This wasn't just an assassination attempt. It was a carefully planned operation designed to manipulate two species into destroying each other. How long have you known? Marcus asked. Princess Lyra looked confused. Known what? That this was more than just a simple assassination attempt. Your reaction in there. You weren't surprised by the betrayal. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I've been receiving intelligence reports for weeks. Strange movements in Krillian space. Unusual weapon shipments, diplomatic communications that didn't match official positions. But I couldn't prove anything. So you used yourself as bait, Marcus realized. You knew they would try something during the meeting. I thought I could handle it with my own guards, Lyra admitted. I thought humans were just primitive soldiers, good only for dying in place of more valuable people. I was wrong. The admission hung in the air between them. Marcus could see how much it cost her to say those words. Princess Lyra had been raised to believe in Zephyrian superiority, taught that humans were barely civilized newcomers to galactic society. Having her worldview shattered by reality couldn't be easy. Your Highness, Captain Veltar said carefully, there's something else you need to know. The intelligence reports we've been receiving, they weren't just about Krillian activities. There are other factions involved. Lyra sat up straighter, ignoring the medic's protests. What kind of factions? The Hegemony, Nix said, naming the galaxy's most powerful military alliance. They've been funding anti-human sentiment across dozens of species. The goal appears to be preventing any formal alliance between the Zephyrian Empire and the Human Federation. Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. They're afraid of what we could accomplish together. Zephyrian technology and human tactics. Their current power structure depends on keeping everyone divided. But why target the princess specifically? The medic asked, finishing his examination of Lyra's injuries. Because I've been the primary advocate for the human alliance, Lyra said. Despite my personal feelings about your species, I recognize the strategic value of cooperation. My death would have ended negotiations permanently. She looked directly at Marcus again, and this time she didn't look away. I owe you an apology, Marcus Chen, and more than that, I owe you my life. You don't owe me anything, Your Highness. I was just doing my job. No, Lyra said firmly. You went far beyond your job. When I ordered you to stay outside that room, any reasonable person would have obeyed. You risked court-martial, diplomatic incident, and your own life because your instincts told you something was wrong. She paused, then continued more quietly. And when Ambassador Krex was about to kill me, you didn't hesitate. You charged into a room full of armed enemies to save someone who had spent the entire day insulting your species and questioning your competence. Marcus shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Like I said, it's my job to protect you. Is it your job to take a grenade blast meant for me? Because that's what you did. The blast pattern analysis shows you deliberately positioned yourself between the explosion and my location. Marcus didn't remember making that choice consciously, but the evidence spoke for itself. In the heat of the moment, protecting Lyra had become more important than his own survival. Perhaps, Lyra continued, I need to reconsider what I know about human nature. Before Marcus could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the medical bay. Emergency lights flashed, and a computerized voice announced a station-wide security alert. Captain Veltar immediately activated his communicator, his face grim as he listened to the incoming reports. What is it? Lyra demanded. 3 Hegemony warships just dropped out of hyperspace, Veltar reported. They're demanding the immediate surrender of all human personnel for questioning in connection with the assassination attempt. They're fast, Marcus observed. Too fast. They had to have been positioned nearby, waiting for their signal. You think they planned this? Nix asked. I think they planned everything, Marcus replied. The assassination attempt was supposed to succeed, making it look like human incompetence got the princess killed. When that failed, they moved to Plan B, blame the humans anyway and use it as justification for military action. Princess Lyra stood carefully, testing her balance. The medical treatment had worked quickly, leaving her steady on her feet despite her recent injuries. How long until Zephyrian reinforcements arrive? 18 hours minimum, Veltar replied. The nearest Imperial fleet is 3 systems away. The station's defenses? Minimal. This is a diplomatic facility, not a military installation. We have some defensive capabilities, but nothing that could stand against 3 Hegemony warships. Lyra was quiet for a moment, her violet eyes distant as she calculated options. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone born to command. Open a channel to the Hegemony fleet. I want to speak with their commander personally. Your Highness? That might not be wise. Do it, Lyra commanded. The main screen in the medical bay flickered to life, showing the bridge of a Hegemony warship. The commander was a Vorthon, one of the galaxy's most militaristic species. His scaled hide was scarred from countless battles, and his yellow eyes burned with predatory intelligence. Princess Lyra, the commander said without preamble, I am Admiral Thexmore of the Hegemony Third Fleet. You will immediately surrender all human personnel aboard that station for questioning in connection with the attempt on your life. Admiral, Lyra replied coolly, I'm curious why you assume humans were responsible for an attack carried out by Krillian operatives. Thexmore's expression didn't change. Our intelligence suggests human involvement in the planning stages. They will be questioned thoroughly. Your intelligence is wrong, Lyra said flatly. The human assigned to my protection detail saved my life. If anyone deserves questioning, it's the Hegemony intelligence network that failed to detect a Krillian conspiracy. The Admiral's eyes narrowed dangerously. Princess, you are obviously suffering from trauma-induced confusion. Human psychological manipulation is well documented. They have clearly influenced your perception of events. Marcus stepped into view of the camera. Admiral, I think what you're really concerned about is that your plan failed. Plan? Thexmore's voice carried a dangerous edge. What plan would that be, human? The plan to eliminate the princess and blame it on human incompetence. When that didn't work, you moved to Plan B. Show up with overwhelming force and take the humans anyway. Either way, the alliance between our species dies, and the Hegemony maintains its power structure. For just a moment, something flickered in the Admiral's eyes that might have been surprise or grudging respect. Then the predatory mask slammed back into place. You have 1 hour to surrender all human personnel, Thexmore said. After that, we will take them by force. Any resistance will be considered an act of war against the Hegemony. The transmission ended, leaving them staring at a blank screen. Well, Marcus said into the silence that followed, I guess we know where we stand. Princess Lyra stood in the station's command center, her torn gown replaced by practical Zephyrian military attire that seemed to shift color with her mood. Currently, it was a deep crimson that matched her determination. Around her, the diplomatic facility's emergency staff worked frantically to coordinate defenses that everyone knew were inadequate. Report, Lyra commanded as Captain Veltar approached. We have 47 humans aboard the station, Veltar said. Diplomats, trade negotiators, technical staff, and security personnel like Marcus. Most are civilian non-combatants. And our defensive capabilities? Limited. The station has basic shield generators and a handful of point defense weapons designed to stop debris, not warships. We might hold off 1 frigate for a few minutes. But 3 Hegemony battleships. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind automatically cataloging the station's weaknesses. The diplomatic facility had been designed for comfort and communication, not warfare. Its shields were meant to deflect space dust, its weapons to clear navigation hazards. Against Admiral Thexmore's fleet, they might as well be throwing rocks. What about evacuation? He asked. The station has sufficient evacuation pods for all personnel, Lieutenant Nix reported. But the Hegemony ships would intercept them easily. Their tractor beams outrange our escape capabilities. So we're trapped, one of the human diplomats said, his voice tight with fear. They're going to take us whether the princess agrees or not. No, Lyra said firmly. They are not. Every head in the command center turned to look at her. The princess moved to the central console, her fingers dancing over controls with practiced ease. The main display shifted to show a detailed scan of the Hegemony fleet. I've been studying Hegemony tactics since I was old enough to understand military strategy, Lyra said. Admiral Thexmore is competent but predictable. He's positioning his ships for a standard intimidation formation. Maximum visual impact, minimal tactical efficiency. Marcus leaned closer to the display, beginning to see what she meant. They're too close together. Overlapping shield matrices, intersecting firing solutions. It's impressive looking, but militarily sloppy. Exactly. The Admiral is counting on our surrender, not actual combat. He doesn't expect resistance from a diplomatic station. Lyra's smile was sharp as a blade. That gives us options. What kind of options? Veltar asked skeptically. Instead of answering directly, Lyra activated the station's communication system. Attention all personnel. This is Princess Lyra Vexthari. In 37 minutes, the Hegemony fleet will attempt to board this station and seize 47 human citizens under false pretenses. This is not merely an attack on our human allies. It is an assault on the sovereignty of the Zephyrian Empire and the principle of diplomatic immunity. Her voice carried throughout the station, reaching every corridor and compartment. I am ordering all non-essential personnel to the evacuation stations. However, I will not abandon our human guests to hegemony persecution. Any who wish to remain and defend this station are welcome to do so. Marcus stared at her in shock. Your Highness, you can't mean to fight 3 warships with a diplomatic station, can't I? Lyra's violet eyes blazed with fierce determination. Tell me, Marcus, what do you know about Zephyrian emergency protocols? Just the basics from the briefing materials. Then let me educate you. Lyra's fingers flew over the console and the station's schematics appeared on screen. Every Zephyrian facility, no matter how peaceful its primary function, contains defensive capabilities that can be activated in extreme circumstances. We are not a species that has survived galactic politics by being helpless. Hidden weapons systems began appearing on the schematics, plasma cannons concealed in the station's superstructure, defensive shields far more powerful than anything Marcus had imagined, and what looked suspiciously like torpedo launchers disguised as communication arrays. The diplomatic station is actually a heavily modified fortress, Captain Veltar explained, pride evident in his voice. Designed to look harmless while being capable of defending itself against small fleets. Small fleets, yes, Nix added cautiously, but 3 hegemony battleships are about to learn why the Zephyrian Empire has remained independent for 3 millennia, Lyra finished. Marcus, I need you to coordinate with the human security personnel. Your species' tactical experience will be invaluable. Marcus felt a surge of something that might have been hope. What do you need? The station's main weakness is its power distribution network. The hegemony will target our generators first, trying to cripple our shields and weapons simultaneously. I need teams positioned to protect those systems and reroute power if necessary. Human engineering crews would be perfect for that, Marcus realized. We're used to jury-rigging systems under combat conditions. Exactly. Can you organize them? Already on it. Marcus activated his communicator, switching to the human emergency frequency. All human technical personnel, this is Marcus Chen. I need volunteers for hazardous duty. We're about to show these hegemony bullies what happens when they threaten diplomatic immunity. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every human technician, engineer, and maintenance worker on the station volunteered within minutes. Even the diplomats wanted to help, though Marcus assigned them to damage control rather than direct combat duties. Impressive, Lyra observed, watching the coordination efforts. Your species certainly doesn't lack courage. We don't like bullies, Marcus replied simply. And we really don't like being told we can't do something. Lyra's expression softened slightly. I'm beginning to understand that about humans. The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of activity. Human engineering teams took up positions near critical systems, while Zephyrian military personnel manned the suddenly revealed weapon systems. The transformation was remarkable. In less than half an hour, the peaceful diplomatic station had become a fortress bristling with hidden weapons. Incoming transmission from the hegemony fleet, the communications officer announced. Put it on screen, Lyra commanded. Admiral Thexmore appeared. His scaled features twisted with impatience. Princess, your hour is nearly up. Surrender the humans immediately or we will take them by force. Admiral, Lyra replied calmly, I have a counter-proposal. Withdraw your ships immediately or discover why threatening Zephyrian sovereignty was the last mistake you'll ever make. Thexmore's laugh was like grinding metal. Princess, you command a diplomatic station with minimal defenses. I command 3 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Your threats are amusing but ultimately meaningless, are they? Lyra touched a control and the station's hidden weapons powered up, their energy signatures clearly visible on any military scanner. Perhaps you should recalibrate your sensors, Admiral. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Thexmore's features. Impressive deception, Princess, but ultimately futile. 3 ships still outmatch 1 station. You're assuming we're alone, Marcus said, stepping into view of the camera again. That's your first mistake. What do you mean, human? Marcus smiled coldly. Did you really think the Human Federation wouldn't be monitoring a diplomatic station with this many of our people aboard? Check your long-range sensors, Admiral. The transmission cut as Thexmore presumably ordered the scan Marcus had suggested. When it resumed, the Admiral's expression had changed from confident superiority to barely controlled rage. You're bluffing, he snarled. There are no human ships in this system. Check again, Marcus suggested. Sometimes our stealth technology is better than you give us credit for. He was lying, of course. There were no human reinforcements coming, at least none that he knew about. But the beauty of human psychological warfare was that the enemy's assumptions often worked against them. The hegemony expected human technology to be primitive, but they also feared human unpredictability. That fear could be turned into doubt. Even if human ships were present, Thexmore said, though he sounded less certain than before, they would be outnumbered and outgunned. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But here's the thing about humans, Admiral. When you back us into a corner, we don't calculate odds. We don't weigh strategic advantages. We just start breaking things until the problem goes away. Princess Lyra looked at him with something that might have been admiration. And when humans and Zephyrians work together, Admiral, we break things very efficiently. You have 15 minutes to reconsider your position, Thexmore growled. After that, we begin boarding operations. The transmission ended again, leaving them staring at tactical displays that showed the hegemony ships moving into attack formation. Well, Marcus said to Princess Lyra, I hope you have a plan, because I was completely bluffing about the reinforcements. I know, Lyra replied, but you weren't entirely wrong. What do you mean? You'll see in about 10 minutes, she said mysteriously. In the meantime, let's prepare to show the hegemony what happens when they underestimate the alliance between our species. Marcus stared at her, beginning to suspect that Princess Lyra had been planning more than just station defenses. Whatever was coming in 10 minutes, he had a feeling it was going to change everything. The first hegemony assault came exactly on schedule. Admiral Thexmore launched a coordinated attack designed to overwhelm the station's defenses through sheer firepower. Energy beams lanced across space, impacting the station's shields in brilliant explosions of discharged energy. The diplomatic facility shuddered under the assault, but the hidden defensive systems held firm. Shields holding at 87%, Lieutenant Nix reported from the tactical station. Their targeting is precise but predictable. Marcus watched the attack patterns on the main display, his tactical training automatically analyzing the enemy approach. They're probing for weak points. Standard hegemony doctrine. Find the vulnerability, then concentrate fire. Let them probe, Princess Lyra said calmly. Every minute they spend testing our defenses is another minute for my plan to develop. The station's concealed weapons came online, returning fire with devastating precision. Plasma cannons that had been disguised as communication arrays launched brilliant streams of energy at the attacking ships. The hegemony vessels' shields flared as they absorbed the unexpected firepower. But they held. The three battleships continued their assault, confident in their numerical superiority. Your Highness, Captain Veltar called out. Their boarding shuttles are launching. 12 craft approaching from multiple vectors. Human teams prepare for boarding action, Marcus announced over the communication system. Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight, we're trying to make them regret starting one. Throughout the station, human technicians and security personnel took up defensive positions. They might not have the advanced weaponry of a military installation, but they had something more valuable, the kind of stubborn determination that had carried humanity from a single planet to the stars. The first boarding pod breached the station's outer hull in the maintenance section. Hegemony shock troops poured through the breach, their advanced armor gleaming under the emergency lighting. They expected to face minimal resistance from diplomatic personnel. Instead, they walked into a carefully prepared killing field. Marcus had positioned his human teams with the ruthless efficiency learned from years of asymmetric warfare. The boarding troops found themselves facing opponents who ignored the civilized rules of engagement that most species followed. Humans fought dirty, using the station's environment against their attackers in ways the hegemony hadn't anticipated. Contact Team 3, came the report over Marcus's communicator. 6 hostiles down, no casualties on our side. Contact Team 7, boarding pod neutralized. They won't be using that breach point again. Princess Lyra monitored the internal battles while coordinating the station's external defenses. Her expression was fierce with concentration as she managed multiple tactical situations simultaneously. This was a side of Zephyrian leadership that humans rarely saw. The iron will. Beneath the elegant exterior, Admiral Thexmore is requesting another communication, the communications officer announced. Put him through. Lyra commanded. The hegemony commander appeared on screen. His scarred features twisted with frustration. Behind him, Marcus could see the controlled chaos of a warship bridge under combat conditions. Princess, Thexmore snarled, your resistance is admirable but pointless. My boarding teams will eventually overwhelm your defenses and my ships will pound your station into scrap metal. Will they? Lyra asked with serene confidence. Tell me, Admiral, how many casualties have your boarding teams taken so far? Thexmore's expression darkened. Acceptable losses. 43 dead, 67 wounded, Marcus interjected, reading from his tactical display. Out of approximately 200 boarding troops. That's a 20% casualty rate in the first 15 minutes of engagement. At this rate, you'll run out of soldiers before we run out of ammunition. Impossible, the Admiral snapped. Your forces are minimal, your weapons limited. Our weapons are limited, Marcus agreed. But our creativity isn't. Did you know that a maintenance bot can be reprogrammed as an explosive device? Or that artificial gravity generators make excellent traps when you reverse their polarity? Humans have been finding new ways to kill things for thousands of years, Admiral. It's what we're good at. Princess Lyra stepped closer to the camera, her violet eyes burning with determination. And Zephyrians have been surviving galactic politics for millennia by being underestimated. Together, we're proving to be more than the sum of our parts. Your defiance is impressive but ultimately meaningless, Thexmore growled. I have 3 battleships. You have 1 station. The mathematics of warfare are simple. Are they? Lyra smiled, and something in that expression made Marcus's heart race. Perhaps you should check your long-range sensors again, Admiral. Thexmore's eyes narrowed, but he gestured to someone off-screen. The pause stretched for several seconds before his expression changed dramatically. Confidence drained away, replaced by something approaching shock. That's impossible, he whispered. What's impossible? Marcus asked, though he suspected he was about to find out what Princess Lyra had been planning. The Zephyrian Imperial Fleet, Thexmore said, his voice hollow. 12 ships emerging from hyperspace on our port flank. Marcus felt his jaw drop. Your Highness, you said reinforcements were 18 hours away. I said the nearest Imperial fleet was 3 systems away, Lyra corrected with a satisfied smile. I didn't mention that I had ordered a full battle group to begin moving toward this system 3 days ago, when my intelligence first suggested a major threat was developing. The tactical display updated to show the arriving Zephyrian ships. They were beautiful and deadly, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight as they moved into attack formation. Compared to the brutal functionality of hegemony warships, they looked like works of art. But Marcus had studied enough military history to know that aesthetic appeal meant nothing in combat. Admiral, Princess Lyra said, her voice carrying the full authority of her royal position, you are now outnumbered 4-1. Your boarding operations have failed. Your surprise attack has become a tactical disaster. I suggest you withdraw immediately and explain to your superiors how you managed to turn a simple intimidation mission into an act of war against the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Thexmore's face cycled through several emotions, rage, disbelief, and finally calculation. He was a military professional, and even through his anger he could see the strategic reality. 3 ships against 12 were impossible odds, especially when his boarding operations had failed and the station's defenses had proven more formidable than expected. This isn't over, Princess, he said finally. The hegemony will not forget this incident. Nor will the Zephyrian Empire, Lyra replied coldly. Any future aggression against human civilians will be considered an attack on Zephyrian interests. We do not forget our friends, Admiral, and we certainly don't forget our enemies. The transmission ended, leaving them watching as the hegemony ships began withdrawing their boarding parties. Within minutes, the 3 battleships were accelerating away from the station, clearly eager to avoid confrontation with the superior Zephyrian force. Clean-up teams to all sections, Marcus announced over the communication system. Secure the boarding breaches and tend to the wounded. Good work, everyone. As the immediate crisis passed, Marcus found himself alone with Princess Lyra in the command center. The other personnel were coordinating with the arriving fleet or managing post-battle operations, leaving the two of them to process what had just happened. "You planned this entire scenario," Marcus said, not quite making it a question. "Not entirely," Lyra admitted. "I expected an assassination attempt, yes. I suspected hegemony involvement. But I didn't anticipate the full scope of their operation, or the fact that they would be bold enough to attempt military action against a diplomatic station. But you had contingencies in place. I had the fleet moving toward this system. Yes, insurance against the worst-case scenario." She looked at him directly. "But I couldn't have held them off long enough for reinforcements to arrive without human assistance." Marcus felt something shift between them, a fundamental change in their relationship. "Your Highness," Lyra, she corrected quietly, "after what we've been through together, I think we can dispense with excessive formality." Lyra then, "I owe you an apology too. I assumed you were just another spoiled royal who didn't understand the real world." "I was wrong. We were both wrong about each other," she said. "I saw humans as primitive savages, good only for violence. You saw me as an arrogant aristocrat who had never faced real danger. We were both partially right, but we missed the important parts, which were that human violence serves human loyalty, and that Zephyrian arrogance masks Zephyrian cunning." She paused, then continued more softly. "We make a good team, Marcus Chen." Before Marcus could respond, Captain Veltar approached with a formal expression. "Your Highness Admiral Cathera of the Imperial Fleet requests permission to come aboard. She wishes to debrief the situation personally." "Of course," Lyra replied, but her eyes remained on Marcus. "Tell the Admiral she'll find the situation well in hand. Thanks to exceptional cooperation between Zephyrian and human forces." As Veltar moved away to coordinate the Admiral's arrival, Marcus realized that something fundamental had changed. Not just between him and Lyra, but in the larger political landscape. The alliance between their species had been tested under fire and emerged stronger. What happens 3 weeks after the battle at the diplomatic station? Marcus found himself in a situation he never could have imagined. Sitting in the war room of a Zephyrian Imperial dreadnought, helping plan military operations against hegemony targets. The massive ship, Starweaver's Dream, was a masterpiece of alien engineering that somehow managed to be both beautiful and terrifyingly powerful. Around the holographic tactical display, representatives from dozens of species studied intelligence reports and battle plans. The attack on the diplomatic station had been just the beginning of a much larger conspiracy, one that threatened the stability of the entire galactic community. "The evidence is conclusive," Admiral Cathara was saying, her musical voice carrying easily through the briefing room. "The hegemony has been orchestrating conflicts across 7 sectors, using various species as proxies to weaken potential rivals. The assassination attempt on Princess Lyra was merely one operation in a much larger campaign." Marcus studied the data streams flowing past his display. Human intelligence services had been sharing information with Zephyrian military analysts, creating a clearer picture of hegemony activities than either species could have developed alone. The results were disturbing. "They've been playing us all against each other," said Commander Torres, the senior human military liaison. "Funding rebel groups here, assassinating diplomats there, spreading propaganda everywhere. Classic divide-and-conquer strategy." "But why target the human Zephyrian alliance specifically?" asked Captain Veltar, now serving as Princess Lyra's military aide. Princess Lyra herself answered from her position at the head of the tactical table. She wore a military uniform now instead of diplomatic robes, the fabric shifting through deep blues and silvers that reflected her serious mood. "Because our combined capabilities represent the greatest threat to their dominance. Zephyrian technology paired with human tactical doctrine and," she paused, looking directly at Marcus, "human determination. The past 3 weeks had transformed their working relationship completely. Where once there had been mutual disdain, now there was professional respect that was deepening into something Marcus was afraid to name." He caught Lyra's eye across the table and saw something there that made his heart skip. "The question is," Admiral Cathera continued, "how do we respond? The hegemony's actions constitute clear acts of war, but their power base is extensive. A direct confrontation could devastate the galaxy. Then we don't fight them directly," Marcus said, an idea forming as he spoke. "We use their own strategy against them. Every eye in the room turned to him. Marcus felt the familiar flutter of nervousness that came with being the only human in a room full of aliens, but Lyra's encouraging nod gave him confidence to continue. The hegemony's strength comes from their network of client species and proxy conflicts. They stay in the shadows, manipulating others to do their fighting. But what if we expose those connections? What if we made their puppet strings visible to the entire galaxy? A propaganda campaign? Commander Torres asked. More than that, a systematic exposure of their operations, backed by military action against their proxy forces. We don't attack the hegemony directly. We dismantle their network piece by piece. Princess Lyra leaned forward, her violet eyes bright with interest. Surgical strikes against their operations while simultaneously revealing their duplicity to their victims. Turn their own allies against them. Exactly. The species they've been manipulating will be furious when they realize they've been played. The hegemony's power structure will collapse from within. Admiral Kythera studied the tactical display, her expression thoughtful. It would require precise coordination between multiple fleets and intelligence services. The timing would have to be perfect. Human and Zephyrian forces working together, Lyra added. A true alliance in action. The briefing continued for another hour, with representatives from various species contributing intelligence and resources to the growing operation. But Marcus found his attention increasingly drawn to Princess Lyra. The transformation in her over the past weeks had been remarkable. The arrogant, dismissive royal had been replaced by a competent military strategist who commanded respect through ability rather than birthright. When the meeting finally ended, most of the participants filed out to begin preparations for their assignments. Marcus lingered, ostensibly reviewing tactical data, but really waiting for a chance to speak with Lyra alone. Something troubling you? She asked as the last of the other officers left. Just thinking about how much has changed, Marcus replied. 3 weeks ago you thought humans were barely civilized savages, and you thought I was a spoiled princess who had never faced real danger. Lyra countered with a slight smile. We've both learned better. She moved closer and Marcus caught the subtle scent of her alien perfume, something that reminded him of distant stars and exotic flowers. I wanted to thank you again for what you did at the station. Not just the fighting, but... She paused, seeming to search for words. But what? For seeing something in me worth protecting, even when I gave you every reason to despise me. Her voice was softer now, more vulnerable than he'd ever heard it. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Marcus felt his heart racing. This conversation was venturing into territory that could complicate everything. Lyra, I know, she said quickly. Duty protocol, the alliance between our species. There are 1,000 reasons why whatever is happening between us is impossible. Is something happening between us? She looked at him directly, and Marcus saw something in those violet eyes that took his breath away. I think you know the answer to that. Before he could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Princess Lyra to the bridge immediately. Priority Alpha communication incoming. The moment shattered, replaced by the urgent demands of military duty. Lyra's expression shifted back to professional competence, but something lingered in her gaze. We should continue this conversation later. Definitely, Marcus agreed, though he wondered if they would get the chance. On the bridge of the Starweaver's Dream, they found Admiral Kythera receiving a priority Alpha transmission from Zephyrian High Command. The Emperor himself appeared on the main screen, his ancient features grave with concern. Father, Princess Lyra said formally, giving the traditional Zephyrian bow. Lyra, the Emperor replied, his musical voice carrying across the light years. I have troubling news. Our intelligence networks have uncovered evidence of a hegemony superweapon project. Something they call the Silence. What kind of weapon? Admiral Kythera asked. Unknown, but the intelligence suggests it's designed to neutralize entire star systems. If the hegemony completes this project, they could enforce their will across the galaxy without fear of retaliation. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. How long do we have? Our estimates suggest 6 months before the weapon becomes operational, the Emperor said. Perhaps less. This changes everything about your current mission. Princess Lyra straightened, her royal bearing asserting itself. What are your orders, Father? Find this weapon, stop it. Use whatever resources necessary, including full cooperation with human forces. The Emperor's gaze shifted to Marcus. I'm told we owe much to human courage and ingenuity already. Perhaps it's time to see what our species can accomplish working together at full capacity. Understood, Lyra replied. We'll begin immediately. After the transmission ended, the bridge fell into thoughtful silence. The mission had just become significantly more dangerous and important. They weren't just dismantling the hegemony's network anymore. They were racing to prevent a weapon that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Well, Marcus said finally, I guess our surgical strike approach just became a full-scale military campaign. Are you ready for that? Lyra asked, and he could hear both the princess and the woman in her voice. Marcus looked around the bridge of the alien warship, surrounded by beings who had gone from despising humans to counting on them as partners. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a simple bodyguard assigned to protect a hostile alien dignitary. Now he was helping plan military operations that could determine the fate of multiple civilizations. Ready or not, he said with a grin that was equal parts confidence and recklessness, it looks like we're about to find out what humans and Zephyrians can really accomplish. Together. Princess Lyra's answering smile was brilliant and fierce. Then let's go save the galaxy. As the great warship changed course toward their first target, Marcus realized that somewhere between the assassination attempt and this moment, protecting Princess Lyra had become about more than duty. It had become personal in ways that terrified and exhilarated him equally. The real adventure was just beginning. The hegemony fortress hung in the void like a metallic cancer, its dark surfaces bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. After 4 months of systematic operations against hegemony proxy forces, Marcus and Princess Lyra's combined fleet had finally tracked the Silence to its source, a massive research station hidden in the gravitational shadow of a dead star, standing on the bridge of the Star Weaver's dream. Marcus studied the tactical displays while trying to ignore the proximity alarms that had been wailing for the past hour. The fortress's defenses were unlike anything they'd encountered before, layer upon layer of overlapping shields and weapon systems that turned the surrounding space into a deadly maze. 15 minutes to weapons range, Admiral Cathera announced. The Zephyrian commander had proven herself to be everything Marcus respected in a military leader, competent, decisive, and utterly fearless in the face of overwhelming odds. How many ships does that make? Asked Commander Torres, reviewing the tactical situation from his position at the human liaison console. 47, Princess Lyra answered without looking up from her command station. 3 full hegemony battle groups, plus whatever automated defenses the station itself possesses. Marcus ran the numbers in his head and didn't like the result. Their combined fleet consisted of 23 ships, impressive for a joint human-Zephyrian task force, but badly outnumbered by the fortress's defenders. In a straight fight, they would be annihilated. Fortunately, they weren't planning a straight fight. Status on the infiltration teams? Lyra asked. Both human and Zephyrian special forces teams are in position, Captain Veltar reported. They're ready to begin sabotage operations on your signal. Over the past 4 months, Marcus had watched Lyra transform from a diplomatic princess into a military commander, worthy of her species' warrior heritage. She had proven to have an intuitive grasp of tactics that complemented human strategic thinking perfectly. Together, they had developed new approaches to warfare that neither species could have achieved alone. More importantly, at least to Marcus, their professional partnership had deepened into something that had no place in military regulations. He was in love with an alien princess, and unless he was badly misreading the signs, the feeling was mutual. Marcus, Lyra said quietly, moving to stand beside him at the tactical display. Are you ready for this? Ready to assault an impregnable fortress defended by impossible odds in order to stop a superweapon that could destroy civilization as we know it? Marcus considered the question seriously. Honestly, I've never been more ready for anything in my life. Lyra's smile was radiant. I was hoping you'd say that. 10 minutes to weapons range, Admiral Cathera announced. All ships, this is Princess Lyra, came the broadcast to the fleet. Today we face an enemy that believes in the superiority of fear over courage, of oppression over freedom, of division over unity. They have spent generations convincing the galaxy that different species cannot work together. That cooperation is weakness, that diversity is a flaw to be corrected. Marcus listened to her speech while making final adjustments to his equipment. He would be leading one of the boarding parties once they breached the station's defenses, assuming they survived long enough to get that far. Today we prove them wrong, Lyra continued. Human ingenuity and Zephyrian wisdom, human determination and Zephyrian precision, human courage and Zephyrian honor. Together we are more than the sum of our parts. Together, we are unstoppable. The fortress's weapons began firing as soon as the fleet entered range. Space erupted in brilliant displays of destructive energy, as dozens of massive cannons attempted to obliterate the approaching ships. But the fleet's formation was specifically designed to counter this threat. Human tactical doctrine adapted for Zephyrian ship capabilities. Evasive pattern Delta 7, Admiral Cathera ordered. All ships begin attack run Alpha. The fleet scattered into seemingly random patterns that were actually carefully calculated to confuse the fortress's targeting systems. Human unpredictability combined with Zephyrian precision to create attack patterns that the hegemonies computers couldn't predict or counter effectively. Direct. Hit on the Moonseeker, came a damage report. Shield generators offline, but she's still in the fight. The Terra Nova. Report successful torpedo strike on the fortress's port defensive grid, another voice added. Marcus watched the tactical display as the battle unfolded. It was like watching a deadly dance, with ships weaving between weapon fire while delivering precise strikes against the fortress's defenses. Gradually, painfully, they were wearing down the enemy's shields. Boarding shuttles away, Admiral Cathera announced. This was it. Marcus turned to Princess Lyra, knowing it might be the last time he saw her alive. The things he wanted to say crowded in his throat, but military protocol and the presence of the bridge crew kept him silent. Lyra seemed to understand. She moved closer, close enough to touch if he dared. Marcus, she said quietly, when this is over, we'll figure out what comes next, he promised. Be careful in there. Always am. Liar. Marcus grinned. See you on the other side, Your Highness. The boarding shuttle Determination carried Marcus and his assault team toward the fortress through a hell of defensive fire. The small craft shook violently as near misses sent shockwaves through its hull, but the pilot, a human woman named Santos who flew with the kind of reckless skill that made Marcus proud of his species, somehow managed to thread them through the chaos. 30 seconds to breach point, Santos called back. Marcus checked his weapons one final time and reviewed the mission objectives. His team's job was to fight their way to the fortress's central computer core and plant charges that would disable the station's defenses. Simple in theory, probably impossible in practice. The shuttle slammed into the fortress's hull with bone-jarring force, cutting tools immediately beginning to slice through the alien metal. Within seconds, Marcus and his team were pouring through the breach into the station's corridors. The hegemony defenders were waiting for them. The next hour became a blur of running gunfights through metallic corridors, desperate firefights at strategic choke points, and the kind of small unit tactics that humans had been perfecting for centuries. Marcus's team fought with the savage efficiency that had made humanity feared throughout the galaxy, but they were badly outnumbered. Marcus, this is Team 2, came a voice over his communicator. We're pinned down in Section 7. Can you assist? On our way, Marcus replied, leading his remaining team members toward the sounds of combat. They arrived to find the Zephyrian Special Forces team trapped by superior numbers, their elegant fighting style proving less effective in the brutal close-quarters environment of the station's interior. But when human and Zephyrian tactics combined, the result was devastating. The computer core is 2 levels down, the Zephyrian team leader reported. But the route is heavily defended. Then we make our own route, Marcus decided. Explosives? Sufficient for the task. What followed was the kind of improvised demolition work that would have horrified safety inspectors throughout the galaxy. Marcus and his combined team literally blasted their way through the station's superstructure, creating new passages when the existing ones proved too dangerous. Finally, after what felt like hours of fighting, they reached the central computer core. The chamber was vast, filled with processing units that hummed with malevolent energy. At its center sat the Silence, a weapon system designed to generate quantum disruption fields that could collapse entire star systems. Plant the charges, Marcus ordered. Full spread pattern. I want this thing reduced to its component atoms. As his team worked to position the explosives, Marcus activated his communicator. Princess Lyra, this is Marcus. We've reached the primary target. Understood, came her voice through the static. What's your status? We can destroy the weapon, but I don't think we're getting out of here. The route back is completely compromised, and there are too many defenders between us and the extraction point. There was a pause before Lyra responded. Marcus, there might be another way. The computer core you're in, it controls the station's entire defensive grid. If you can access the primary systems, Marcus looked at the massive processing array and understood. You want us to turn the station's weapons against itself. Can you do it? Marcus looked at the Zephyrian team leader, who nodded grimly. We can try. But someone needs to stay behind to manually override the safety systems. I'll do it, Marcus said immediately. No, the Zephyrian replied firmly. This is a task that requires precision and technical knowledge. I am better qualified. Before Marcus could argue, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. Someone's coming, one of his team members reported. A lot of someones. Do it, Marcus ordered. Everyone else prepare for defensive positions. We hold this room until the job is done. The final battle was everything Marcus had expected and worse. Wave after wave of hegemony soldiers poured into the computer core, determined to stop the sabotage at any cost. Marcus and his combined team fought with desperate courage, but they were running out of ammunition and options. Charges planted, someone reported. Override sequence initiated, the Zephyrian technician added. 30 seconds to system takeover. 20 seconds.